how does grading differ based on your locale? Are there some factors new teachers should be aware of? What is the exact process like? Are there separate grading systems? And I think some people program or in our class were talking about entering grades in twice. I know Jake, I think, brought up that point that he had to put in his grades on a spreadsheet and then enter it into a computer system. So basically, he was duplicating his work. So some of the questions that I think having guest speakers here could answer is, how does the grading process look like? Since a lot of us are new teachers, I think we're definitely going to be coming across this situation in our classrooms, and it would help for us to kind of have a background into what we should be expecting. Okay, so I don't think I'll move back. So let me go on to the next slide. So our next slide, if we pull up here, would be on discussing the limitations. So some of the things that the guest speakers can talk to us about, or talk to future students about, is there a set criteria on which grades are based? Can you award points for extra credit? So I know, like, this is one question that I've had is, how flexible are teachers in giving out extra credit? Can you just give extra credit to whoever wants to do it? I mean, or is there a limit on the amount of extra credit that we can give? And how do you determine the final grade for students? Are there any kind of limitations on the way that we can give out grades? I know in some schools in the city, they round off the grade. I don't know how that happens, but you don't get an exact grade. So like, let's say somebody got 63, they round off to 65. So, so something like that. I don't know if that's like a universal thing that goes on in every school, or maybe it's just in some of the schools in the city, or maybe it's the principal. So just some of those kind of questions. I know, like, those kind of questions are a little bit awkward. Like, us being students, a lot of us would probably be reluctant to ask the principal, like, why are you doing like this? So some of these kind of questions that we can are questions that we can discuss in our second life class with former teachers. Let's see. Yeah, so the second slide was basically on limitations for teachers, or what can we basically do to give grades to students. So our next slide that we had was on the process of entering grades into the system. So some of the questions that we could have answered are, where do the grades get entered? Is there a central database where teachers have access, where they can enter grades directly to the students? So like, something is like, for me, if I was to start teaching in class next semester, some of the questions that I would like to know is, where do you get access? I mean, is there a login or a PIN that you're supposed to get? Who do you get this login and PIN from? Are there specific timelines for grades? Can you enter grades as you collect them, or do you have to create your own grading system? I kind of know the answer to this one a little bit based on the school where I was substituting. I know you have to keep your own grades, but is this like a universal process which happens throughout New York State, or is it dependent on the school? So those are kind of the slides that I had on creating an event where we can have a guest speaker answer a lot of these questions that probably most of us are going to come across at some point during our career. Tammy, you want to go into the next slide?
Secrecy. I cannot take the mysteriousness, the secrecy that's going on, and what can we do about it? Uh, um, the information that I started with. Oh, I'm sorry, Ralph. Tariq, is this
Yeah.
part of yours, the one you got on complaints?
Well, yeah. I mean, I can
Are
go
you
into that a
done
little
with
bit. I
that?
think, yeah, I think Jake was probably gonna pick up
That
on
was
that, but
Jake's.
since he's
Okay.
not here, yeah, since he's not here, I can go into that a little bit. So yeah, basically, me and Jake were talking about complaints. So what? So another question that we're gonna come across at some point in our careers is, what happens when a student fails? and starts complaining about their grade. Uh, like I said previously, one of the questions is how much extra credit can we give? So if a student is failing a class, at the end of the semester, a lot of them want to do extra credit all of a sudden to make up their grade. So one of the things that you're sure to come across is, as a teacher, if you limit the extra credit, um, some students are eventually gonna complain. And one of the things that I would be concerned about, or one of the things that I would like to know is, um, as a teacher, am I supposed to allow the student to um, do enough extra credit to make up their whole semester grade, or should I be failing them because they meet the criteria to pass the class? And another question that I would like to know is the administration going to be able to back me up? If I'm failing a student, it doesn't help if I'm failing a student and then somebody comes along and says you have to pass the student. So that kind of takes away from your power as a teacher. Then other students will think, oh, okay, this teacher, you can get away with not doing anything in class, because what's going to happen at the end of the semester is you're going to end up passing you anyway. I've seen that happen to a couple of students, so that's why I kind of put this point in my presentation. The other thing that we thought would be important is the criteria for failing a student, because I know this is a big topic in a lot of schools, especially towards the end of the term. Basically, a lot of schools get their funding decided based on the amount of students that are passing the classes and obviously passing the regions. So at the end of the semester, basically what happens is everybody wants to pass the students, but if they don't have the grades, that's where you kind of get stuck as a teacher. So this is one question that probably a lot of us would want answered is if a student is failing, what can we do to pass them, or should we be passing them, or should we just be failing them? Kind of the same question that we covered in the previous slide, but basically this slide is more about your responsibility as a teacher and what you should be, how you should be grading the students. Okay, so Tammy, you want to go for the next slide?
Okay, so all of this information needs to be housed in a central repository for everyone to have access to, and specifically for our MAT group. I have been participating with the NSTA, several NSTA listservs, and they have great ideas. I have folders full of lessons and tips and you name it, a whole potpourri of information in a all sectioned off into different subjects. And the whole purpose of a listserv is so that we can share the information amongst our peers, but the information we get from the NSTA listserv is nationwide. It's a lot to sift through, and so our idea here is to have a listserv that's just for the MAT students, so that we can share, as somebody said earlier in the chat, in a safe environment where we can say, look, I'm having trouble with this. Can you help me with this? Can you provide some information on a policy? Can you give some information on labs, testing, teaching tips, and an entire repository of vetted lessons that will help all of us be successful in our future years. Next slide, please. So we could have some topics that would be included with the listserv. We could have one of the things that I'm so desperately want to do and have is smartboard training. So many schools use them. I can watch and learn, but it's not like actually using it and learning it. And I'd love for us to be able in our MAT environment to actually have smartboard training. Training on the NSTA website would be awesome, and that's something we could do in our virtual space, is to have NSTA come to the MAT group and say, here's how we can take advantage and use it to the best of your ability and understand the ins and outs. And I've done a lot of that, I'm sure all of you have too, but we're just sort of poking right now around the NSTA website trying to find what we need, and we don't have time to do that. We really just need, a session to say, here's how to get the most out of the NSTA website, and here's how to work your way around it. A scientist roundtable that would include collaborations with our current professors have with colleagues, and suggestions from colleagues from each of us on scientists that are doing current research that we could access, that we could actually bring into our classrooms and have a webinar or a Skype to bring that connection to our students. Virtual tours of their facilities, and just understanding the latest research that they're working on is just vital. Next slide, please. And I think what we would need to do is to look to somebody like Dr. O'Connor, who's going to be our host. We'd need a technological advisor for the group. We'd need a peer committee of us MAT students and a mentor to guide us along the way, so that we've got the appropriate content, that we've got the etiquette, and a liaison. So it's my whole effort here, as I said earlier, was to cut the secrecy. I'm so darn tired of it. I'm tired of other teachers that you're observing that don't want to share, and I just think it's ludicrous, and we've got an opportunity to change that. And so there's my stuff.